it didn't occur overnight. It was more like observing a small crack making its way across a perfect pane of glass, hardly visible at first, until suddenly the whole thing shatters into pieces. What was once seen as a daring, united family deciding to live an unusual life together has disintegrated into grief, blame, and deep wounds that still have not healed. If you've been watching Sister Wives since the start, you already know this was never merely a reality TV show. This was an actual family, real love, real heartbreak, and now, irreparable damage. But how did it end up like this? What happened so terribly wrong behind the scenes? Stick with me, because what I'm about to expose will change your perception of this family forever. At the heart of it all is Cody Brown, a man who once proudly boasted of unity, equality, and spiritual calling. He was the family's voice, standing up for plural marriage as a divine calling, something greater than themselves. But over time, that ideal began to disintegrate. One wife after the other started to feel isolated, neglected, and emotionally abandoned. Cody, once a beacon of justice, became emotionally inaccessible to everyone, except one woman. And that's where things get complicated, because the addition of Robin, the so-called fresh start to the Brown family, was meant to create harmony. Instead, it triggered a series of events that would eventually split them up. Fans did not miss it either. The favoritism, the cold shoulders, the camera captures that screamed louder than words. And as the seasons went on, those veiled tensions blew up into undeniable betrayals, heartbreak, and disabling estrangement among members of the family. If you believe that reality television couldn't possibly go any darker, believe me, you'll want to watch on. Because what followed left fans appalled, and some family relationships severed irreparably. Hi everyone, I'm Mia. Welcome back to your home for unapologetic, real moments about the biggest drama shaking our favorite reality TV families. First off, smash that subscribe button, hit that like, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think was the last straw for this family? I went through all of that. And now, let's cut to the chase of why this family's dream became a nightmare. In the early days of Sister Wives, Cody portrayed a picture of a family based on trust, faith, and support. But as the cameras continued to roll, it became apparent. Actions spoke louder than words. Wives were more and more overlooked, while Robin quietly became the focal point of Cody's attention. It wasn't just the wives experiencing the change. The children also sensed it. And when disaster hit this family, that fragile glass that was already cracked shattered at last. In one of the series' most devastating plot twists, the unexpected death of a cherished family member shook the entire Brown family to its core. It was an opportunity that could have been used for healing. But instead, it revealed all the unspoken resentments and all the cracks beneath the surface. And what Cody did afterwards? It left everyone stunned. Instead of upholding the bequests of mourners, he came to the funeral with cameras in hand, wired for audio, grinning for the camera crew. A sacred, personal goodbye turned into another show the world could voyeuristically observe. If you didn't think that reality television would become any more intrusive, that was the second when it breached the boundary. His closest friends pleaded for privacy. They asked Cody not to make the funeral a show. But he showed up anyway. With Robin, cameras in hand, microphones attached, relatives were outraged. Guests who attended to pay their respects had to navigate production assistants and boom mics. The funeral, a time for somber reflection, was an awkward, tension-filled spectacle. And if you think this is the end of the story, wait a minute. Because after this, things changed. Following the service, court papers emerged proving Cody was never legally added on the deceased's birth certificate. But he had usurped all elements of the funeral preparations. Those nearest to the young fellow had called for a secret, family-only send-off, but Cody overruled them. The aftermath of this move? It tore whatever remaining threadbare connections within the family utterly asunder. Fans went onto social media outraged. Longtime viewers who'd watched the family's highs and lows for years were shocked. Many wondered how anyone could profit from such raw, personal tragedy for ratings. The comments rolled in, and the network remained quiet. Even the Brown children, some of whom had once stood up for their father, started questioning everything. The betrayal wasn't just public, it was deeply personal. and it left a wound that might never fully heal. So, what started as a story about love, faith, and unity has now become a cautionary tale about ego, favoritism, and misplaced priorities. Do you recall how your heart sank while watching that? Her stifling tears, her attempting to remain calm. Us, sitting at home, angry on her behalf. Not because she was perfect, none of them were, but because no woman should be emotionally discarded while being asked to stay for the sake of appearances. And here's where things get worse. As Mary clung to the fading hope of reclaiming her marriage, it became painfully clear. This wasn't a partnership anymore. It was a role she was asked to quietly play while the real story unfolded elsewhere. And trust me, it only gets heavier from here. Then there's Christine. And if Mary's story was heartbreaking, Christine's was a revolution. Years of silent rage, of unspoken anger, of quiet weeping at last exploded into one of the most daring actions we've witnessed on reality TV. Do you remember that moment? Christine, tall and strong, loading Cody's things into boxes, piling them in the garage like so many forgotten memories. It wasn't petty. It wasn't a momentary lapse. It was power, a clear, final statement. I'm done being an afterthought. And it wasn't about her marriage. It was about her kids. Christine pleaded with Cody to be present for their daughter, Isabel, during her life-changing back surgery. He didn't show up, he didn't fly out, didn't stand behind his own child as she went through one of the most frightening experiences of her life, and that shattered something within her. And if you're a mom, you felt it. You didn't just witness it on TV, you experienced it in your heart. Christine at last uttered words countless women have choked down for decades. I don't want to be in a marriage where I'm not valued. And then she left, not quietly, not angrily, with force. It wasn't hers alone. It was every woman's moment who's ever been made to feel second best in her own home. But the tale doesn't end there. Now, let's discuss Janelle. Janelle's journey was more subdued, but don't confuse quiet with weak. She was the practical one for years, the peacekeeper, the one who kept her head down, stayed focused on her kids, and let the storms blow over. But gradually, those cracks started to appear. Especially during the pandemic, when Cody's rules made it painfully clear where his allegiance really was. The favoritism wasn't even subtle anymore. And then came that conversation. Season 17. Tension so thick you could feel it through the screen. Janelle sat across from Cody and said what we had all been waiting for. Your rules are unreasonable. You're pushing us all away. She wasn't arguing. She wasn't begging. She was finished with being invisible. And when she confessed, in raw, hurting candor, I don't even know what this is anymore. You got hit with that gut punch, because how many people have spoken those very words in the mirror, in dead marriages, in terminal relationships? The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was freighted. It bore decades of pain, things left unspoken, and things too tender to face. For anyone paying attention, it seemed like being a witness to three women learning over time that love shouldn't be this, that a partnership meant to raise each other up had quietly grown into a state of isolation and secret heartbreak. Devotion to a familial model that did no longer stand no longer made it devotion. It was betrayal by himself. This wasn't some abrupt explosion. The Brown family didn't implode in a single dramatic episode. It was a gradual disintegration drawn out over years of subtlety, slighted, forgotten birthdays, uneven holidays, small quiet moments when Cody's focus had gone in one direction and everyone else went muted in the background. It wasn't the fights that stung, it was the absence, the disregard. Love doesn't leave you standing in the dark, hoping someone will see you're still there. Robin insisted repeatedly that she never asked to be the favorite, but somewhere along the way, her words and her position parted ways. As she cried over the increasing distance, she remained solidly in the one place the other wives no longer belonged, Cody's inner circle. And the viewers caught on. The viewers experienced every overlooked wife's pain. Twitter was abuzz with women expressing they'd lived it too, seeing in those quiet sister wives moments the echo of their own silent, invisible pain. Because what we were seeing wasn't merely a plural marriage that was breaking up. It was a heartbreaking lesson in emotional abandonment, and no contract of law, no shared religious faith, No promise of a divine payoff can keep a family intact when love is in short supply, and loyalty becomes a one-way street. But the true tragedy wasn't in the marriages themselves, it was what went on behind the scenes. Out of the public eye, in the hearts of those who never enlisted in this test of plural living. The kids, those formerly raucous, joyful living rooms, fell silent, the giggles less often, the relationship between siblings strained. The children didn't pull away from each other. They pulled away from the man who was to hold them together. And nothing epitomized that loss more than the Isabel episode. That moment wasn't difficult to watch. It was heartbreaking. Seeing a daughter deal with the lack of a father when she needed him most spoke volumes about how far this family had strayed. It wasn't polygamy anymore. It was about those who had been left behind, bit by bit, year by year, until nothing remained but the memories of what once had been. There was Isabel, this quiet, sweet young girl going through one of the most frightening moments of her childhood, major spine surgery. And all she hoped for, above all else, was that her dad would be there, holding her hand. But Cody declined to go. He blamed pandemic travel restrictions, claimed it was too risky, even though he continued to safely visit Robin's home whenever he pleased. That excuse didn't ring true. Not for the fans, not for Christine, and not for Isabel. Christine attempted to hold it together in front of the cameras, but you could see it on her face, devastation behind a courageous smile. And Isabel, bless her heart, smiled through tears, attempting to reassure herself that she knew why her dad wasn't coming. But you could see it in her eyes. She didn't know. How could she? How do you tell a daughter that her father just did not want to be there for her when she needed him the most? And it wasn't just one isolated moment. Over the years, those emotional gaps widened between Cody and most of his kids. The only exceptions were the children living under Robin's roof. Fans picked up on it, season after season. You'd hear Cody speak about Robin's kids with a tenderness he reserved solely for them. Viewers started asking tough questions. Why wasn't he showing up for Gwendolyn? Where was he for Hunter, for Gabriel, for Savannah? Why did he always refer to Robin's home as obedient and loyal, while referring to the rest of his children as rebellious and disrespectful? That wasn't fatherhood. That was favoritism masquerading as concern. It was a pattern, one that could only be ignored for so long. And then there were those stomach-twisting moments with Janelle's sons. The camera captured something real, something you can't manufacture. Gabriel, alone in a confessional, dissolved into tears. He confessed that Cody had not called. No check-ins, no birthday calls, not even a text to inquire about his well-being. A father vanishing from a child's life, not in a dramatic, sudden departure, but in casual, quiet abandonment. And then there was the birthday. Gabriel shared the story, his voice cracking as he explained how his dad called him, but not to wish him a happy birthday. No, Cody called to fight about pandemic regulations and whether Gabriel was abiding by them. He didn't even know it was his son's birthday until Gabriel had to remind him. That broke fans. It wasn't about COVID or family politics anymore. It was about a boy who felt invisible to the one man who was supposed to love him no matter what. Gabriel wasn't merely angry. He was devastated with sorrow. The cameras captured him in a raw, unguarded moment, fighting back tears, whispering he just forgot. His dad, the man who was supposed to be his rock, didn't even call on his birthday. No message, no check-in, nothing. It was one of the most traumatic moments ever filmed on this program. Because these aren't kids anymore. These are young adults with years of unspoken hurt and partiality. And believe me, they remember it all. Even in the new episodes, tension in the family is so heavy you can cut it with a knife. Cody doesn't notice, or perhaps he won't. He remarks, "They pulled away from me," as if he did not invest decades making decisions that created that space. The audience witnessed what he did not, how he justified himself from the difficult times, avoided painful conversations, and insisted on loyalty without providing love. He insisted on respect, but would not construct genuine relationships. And while the wives' relationships disintegrated in public, the actual harm was quietly taking place, behind the scenes, in the hearts of those children. The Brown children didn't merely observe their family fracture, they felt it way before the cameras felt it. They felt the changing priorities, the broken promises, the selective love. Now, They're left attempting to make sense of a family legacy rooted in oneness but achieved in fragmentation. And honestly, that might be the most painful wound of all. Now, let's discuss the name that always comes up when others speak about this family's destruction: Robin. If you view her as the puppeteer masterminding everything, or just a woman who happened into the tempest, one thing can't be debated. The vibe shifted the day she came onto the scene. Robin was more than yet another wife part of the plural marriage. Starting on day one, her coming made the dynamics shift. 40 become the unobtrusive architect of the Brown family's downfall, intentionally or not. And you know what? It's not mindless drama on board viewers. It's years of tangible behavior. Season by season, it was evident. Cody wasn't merely favoring certain people. He was rebuilding the Brown family in Robin's image, and the rest of them were either supposed to conform or subtly fade into obscurity. Early on, the audience wanted to believe her tears. There was some sympathy when she cried about being misunderstood or blamed for all that Cody did. But sympathy wore thin when her actions continued to contradict her words. She said she wanted sister wives, that this wasn't what she requested. Yet in every climactic family fight, Robin remained silent when she should have spoken up. When Christine was being dismantled, when Janelle was being shut out, when Mary was being demeaned publicly, Robin kept quiet, and that silence resounded loudly. Fans weren't being paranoid. The trend was too clear. Cody's overnights, holidays, pandemic rulings, even his legal marriage, all gradually gravitating toward Robin's orbit. And what about the other wives? They were left sewing together their integrity while being termed rebellious, unfaithful, or intractable if they dared speak up. Social media's been cruel, and truthfully, it's because people can see through it now. Reddit posts are full of die-hard fans analyzing each passive-aggressive exchange, each crocodile tear, each well-crafted confession. Comment spaces are filled with watchers criticizing the hypocrisy, asking the same hard questions. If you didn't want to be the favorite, why didn't you stand alongside the other women when it mattered? With her kids, moments of peace on the land. But the joy was always tempered by the quiet effort of forging a new life out of nothing. There were no extravagant Instagram updates and loud new statements. Janelle was doing much tougher. She was stubbornly and quietly piecing together her heart, embracing solitude and holding out for something more. It wasn't the glamorous fresh start you'd expect from reality TV, but it was real. It was raw, and it was a slow process of finding herself again. The farm wasn't just a project, it became her symbol of freedom. A place where she could finally heal without the toxic weight of a broken family dragging her down. The land was bare, but it held a promise, a chance for Janelle to rebuild what had been shattered. But beginning anew is never as simple as it seems. There were battles she didn't always display, battles no one could observe. The loneliness, the brutality of beginning from scratch, it all began to take its toll on her. Yet, the quiet strength that Janelle demonstrated was louder than any gaudy display of fortitude could have been. It wasn't about starting over for the cameras. It was about starting over for herself. Meanwhile, Cody's world was crashing around him. The emotional distance, the walls he'd constructed around his family, they weren't going to fall down easily. No level of control or manipulation was going to repair the damage he'd caused. Fans saw him withdraw further and further from his family, retreating into his own bubble with Robin, driving away the children who had been a part of his life since day one. There were instances where he had looked lost, blaming the distance on his kids, as though they'd grown away from him. But for everyone observing, it was certain. The destruction wasn't unidirectional. The walls had been constructed with his own two hands. The agonizing reckoning was imminent. And regardless of how many times Cody attempted to shift the blame to everyone else, he couldn't escape the reality that his own decisions had formed the gap between him and his family. And when that reckoning arrived, it was as crushing as it was unavoidable. This entire journey, this tragic tale of family, betrayal, and shattered ties was always something more than merely polygamy. It was about the psychic toll of a system that never protected the ones it said it was serving. It was about the children witnessing their parents coming apart, about the wives picking up the fragments, and the man who tried to control all things, yet couldn't even keep it all together. Janelle's journey is one of quiet resilience. And the strength she exhibits in her isolation is a testament to her own ability to stand alone. The pain of losing a child, a marriage, and the life she believed she lived has been intensely personal. Yet her refusal to break under its weight is inspiring. Seeing her build her new life on that desolate earth isn't so much about building a house, it's about rebuilding her sense of self. There's an unvarnished truth in Janelle's recovery. She's not marketing it or making it look effortless. She's experiencing it, every ugly, draining second of it. And Cody, the man who once sat at the center of it all, boasting about his expanding family and his prowess at handling multiple wives, has changed into something much different. The arrogant patriarch has become a man who is falling apart before our eyes. The burden of all that he has lost, his wives, his children, his carefully constructed life, has finally caught up to him. There is one defining moment in recent years where Cody completely breaks down. He's sobbing, admitting the regret, the confusion, and the crushing realization of his failure. For the first time, it seems like he's not acting. The pain is real. But even in that raw moment of sorrow, one thing is certain. Regret is not enough. What Cody has yet to realize, and what viewers still get to see play out, is that responsibility comes next. Regret may be step one, but it doesn't repair anything. It doesn't mend relationships or heal wounds. And Cody still hasn't taken the steps to mend the harm he's done. He's been left with the remains of a family that used to feel invincible. The trust is broken, and the family structure has been irreparably changed. His children have grown up emotionally, while his wives, who were faithful, left not because they despised him, but because they could no longer deny how invisible they'd become to him. And so the question remains, unanswered. Will Cody ever make the hard moves toward responsibility? Will he finally arrive for the family that he once said he loved? Or is he too wrapped up in his own self-pity to change for real?